here we go. It's Monday, the aftermath. It was a very, very decent weekend on planet Celtic. Rodgers has his poise back. Jonathan, have you got your breath back yet, mate? I briefly met you in Molly Malone's yesterday, mate, and looked like you had a good time, son.
Yeah, I did enjoy myself. I got myself home promptly after that, thinking about work the next morning. But very enjoyable day, very enjoyable indeed.
Good. Right, okay, it is Monday. It is the only place to be, 7 p.m. on a Monday. If you are a Celtic podcast viewer, then jump on the bus, cause no fuss. Get a grip of yourself, it don't cost much. Let's do all that good stuff. All that good stuff means, remember, give us a wee like, give us a share, slag the hair. If you want to subscribe, hit the bell, do all that, carry on. Even better, if you want to become a Boise Bus member, like so many of you have, it does keep the wheels on the road. We really appreciate it. The likes of Balls to the Walls, Ali, D-Mac, Mikey Monaghan, Danny O'Malley, Pam, Gary Brown, so many others, Jim C. It's loads of yous. If you want to be like one of them and become a Boise Bus member, it's $1.99 a month. It's totally optional. The content remains free. PieSports.com, 12.5% off. It's a tasty discount. But I know what you're all waiting for. There's 91 live in the bus. Jonathan, take it away, son.
Well, Russell, yesterday at Ibrox, school was indeed in session as headmaster Brendan decided it was time to give the belt to Beale repeatedly. There were some A-plus performances in amongst all of that, with Callum McGregor and Liam Scales being particularly standout students. But once Brendan was done beating Beale about with his belt, he would then turn to his eraser and start to rub out Rangers' title hopes in one swift motion. The sharpeners in the Ibrox support are now being ready to turn on their manager, but their board have a different bit of stationery in mind, and it's their favourite classroom utensil as they went for their crayons today to write to the SFA about a decision that was, quite frankly, the most correct decision I've ever seen in a derby. But, you know, Russell, when you join all of the dots together, it becomes apparently clear that it'll be Mickey Beale that will soon be handed his jotters. Class dismissed.
That is just genius. That is just utter genius. What a way to kick it off. School's out for the summer. That usually is probably their favourite song come the end of the season, to be fair as well, because there's no two ways about it. Once, you know, the pre-season cup's out the road, Jonathan, and school is back in session, one of them gets taken by the hand to school, the other one leads the way. Celtic top of the table. Brendan back finding, as I keep referring to on this channel, finding his poise, finding his swagger, finding a pair of aviators as well. As if that is not deliberate. Aviators on the reflective ones, a wee hand wave out the Jeep that he's driving, and just looking like he's beginning to bring his swagger back. You know, there's the wee gift doing the rounds right now, Jonathan, after the goal at Ibrox. He turns around with the two fingers in the air to the bench, and you start thinking, same but different? Or is it just the same as it ever was? It was a fantastic day yesterday. It was against the odds. I did have a feeling, if I'm honest, I thought it might become a game that we could then maybe contrast and compare with 2019-2020 season, the phantom treble season, as I call it, when Neil Lennon won 3 out of 3 trophies that year, gets zero credit for it, against a all-conquering, even though they conquered hee-haw, Steven Gerrard's side. I think they chalked up one win against Brendan Rodgers before he left, so that they decided that they were now the best team in Scotland. Lenny went to Ibrox, they hoofed the ball at the corner flag that time. They won the game 2-0. I felt yesterday was a bit like, is everyone want to calm down now? Let's just get into the game, Jonathan. Me and Terry did a PM piece. We don't need to go blow by blow because we kind of did a
Chronological.
That's the one. Chronicle. I get what I say. Chronological order of the game yesterday. Let's talk about the highlights of it. Cal McGregor, we talk about people finding their poise again. Talk to me about the captain. He definitely was hilarious yesterday in the fact that not only was he obviously coming out to the game thinking in his mind, I'm going to get back to my best today, because you need to have that mindset to do what he did, but then also probably marveling in disbelief at the fact that, oh my God, that guy's that aloof. He thinks I'm shite because I've not been at the races this season and they're going to sit off me and give me time to dictate the game. It was an insane move from Beale. But let's talk about the captain and why so often you hear about when we talk about Celtic, when Cal McGregor plays well, Celtic play well. And is it not more poignant to look at the Ibrox game and go, it kind of makes sense because we've not played well this season. Neither's he. Suddenly he has that swagger about him in that first half, and we end up winning the game 1-0 thanks to a goal from that first half.
Yeah, I think when it looks like Callum McGregor, you're looking at it, and there's no two ways about it. The chips were down for Celtic going into the game at Ibrox. I think most of us would have quite happily taken a draw when we seen the team sheet announced. There was a lot of concern around some of the players starting and the fact some of our players, including Cal Mack, hadn't hit form. But I think that's when McGregor comes into his own. I think that is when he really enjoys it, is when he's written off a little bit. And, there is a little bit more pressure put on his shoulders, and he knows he's going to need to be one of the ones that leads from the front to try and get us through it. And you could tell that anytime he was getting on the ball, he was the one driving things forward, dictating the play in the middle of the park. I felt that the Rangers' tactics were sensationally hilarious, how poor they were. I must have spotted about 3 or 4 times where they sat off, and you like good players like Callum McGregor play football, he's going to punish you. And he probably could not believe how much space he had. You could tell as the half was going on, after we got in and got through that sort of first 10, 15 minutes, survived the offside goal in the first minute, you could see him really growing into the game, and he began to realise this is going to be a piece of piss. I think we were been so consumed by, the issues we've had at the start of this season. We actually forgot that team across the city are utter hopeless. And I think Callum McGregor decided it was aptly time to remind them just how pathetic they are. And he put in an absolutely brilliant performance. And that will probably be the sign of things to come for him, because getting a win like that is going to help build momentum. There's obviously the Champions League games not too far away on the horizon. And it's amazing, Russell, what one result can kind of do for everything. And I think Lenny said it best after the game when he's talking about the psychology of winning that game, because that was a game where Celtic were nowhere near full strength. They were going to a hostile environment where they had no fans in the ground. Rangers will not get a better chance to beat Celtic this season than they just had on Sunday. Celtic will be stronger every other time. I would feel very confident to say that. Every other meeting this season, Celtic will be a far stronger animal than they were yesterday. However, Celtic still won. And that is an ominous sign if you're a Rangers fan. But from our point of view, I think we now have to look at that and really kick on. And Callum McGregor will be absolutely instrumental in that. And I think it's incredible how, last week we were, talking about the fans perhaps getting a little bit itchy feet with Brendan. I think after a result like that and the performance from some of his boys, the fans have all been won back around.
Well, that's it. You talk about signs, Jonathan. The only sign I can think of being made right now is the Murty sign. And the Murty sign wouldn't be getting made by Rangers fans. They'll be getting made by Brendan Rodgers, who wants a realistic opponent in the dugout, mate, because he didn't come back for this. He's sitting there like, what? I thought this guy was meant to be good. He's more hopeless than the last incumbents of this job that I used to slap about silly. So, no, brilliant, mate. It's an exciting time as well. Do you know what I mean? It just feels like, as you say, if ever there's a result to get everyone kind of now, the window's shut. The arguments with when Terry was trying to bring up yesterday, God bless his soul, he had a point in what he was saying. It's just that wasn't the time or place. It's how the viewers felt, which is fine. But Terry only gets on after a game, so you can't, he wants to give his broader spectrum on it all. I get that as well. Yeah. But I do think that now the window's shut, now we've went to Ibrox, won with 4 points clear after 4 league games. Yes, the League Cup's a pain in the arse, but you know what? I've said on this channel as well many times before, I would swap the League Cup a million times if it meant we had a better, success in Europe. I think we will have more success in Europe under this guy, but the best chance we give him is by all going into it united. And I think a result like we get Ibrox can only help that occur. I do think aviators helped. I think the driving by, waving at the fans, I do think stuff like that helps. He looked, even those wee sort of moments, I mean, people might think it's daft, but I think they play into the psyche. I think that gets people on board. I want to talk about his tactics in the first half, though, Jonathan. How we know how Rangers play these fixtures. The blood, the thunder, the gusto, the staunchness comes out. And for all the critique that's been made of Rodgers' style in terms of too slow, too pragmatic, it's almost like they're thinking too much. They're too pensive, if that's the word. I'm trying to think of a good word. But they're almost they're not playing off the cuff. They're not playing with enough gusto. And I think when you go from an Ange Postecoglou type team to any sort of team, they're always going to look negative. And I wonder if the players got the message a wee bit wrong. Ponderous sounds good, David Kelly. Good to have you on that bus, mate. I like ponderous. That'll do. Woo! Pensive, says Monty. Compelling stuff.
You've been reading your thesaurus before coming on tonight.
Yes. But I wonder if now we begin to see, firstly, the players getting the message a wee bit better, Jonathan, and now going, so it doesn't mean like we just play backwards. It's like, no, there's just got to be more patience in the play. I thought Brendan, though, he knew how to nullify them yesterday. It's for almost a lot of the traits that he's had criticism for. He's like, they want this game to be absolute bonkers. That's what will play into their hands with the 50,000 Bayern mob, 100 mile an hour football. How about we just keep the ball? Let's keep the ball. Let's get calm in the ball as much as possible. But let's get this true as well. No two ways about it. Brendan didn't expect Callum McGregor to have the space and time he did to dictate the play that he did. But that being part of the equation only helped. I thought Brendan, particularly first half, decided, I'm going to nullify him. I know how to nullify him. We're going to play in little triangles. Just little triangles round them. They're going to be going at 100 miles an hour. Their adrenaline's pumping. They won't be thinking when they're off the ball cleverly. They'll be thinking impulsively. That's what I think we've seen. And I think Celtic were very, very calm when in their passing. And as Sutton said, the patterns of play you actually seen were identifiable at times. Then when you got the opportunity for a wee bit of a clinical moment, you've seen Callum McGregor's ball through for a bada, etc. I felt that, particularly first half, Barlager Beale coming be trying his best to give us a heart attack. I thought he did pretty well. Rodgers won't ever play Rangers with that first 11 a game. Remember that as well.
Yeah, it's incredible what he's managed to really achieve there, and that's really what the difference comes down to, because the Celtic team was there for the beating at Ibrox. It was why the Rangers fans were so vocal at full time, because they could not believe that they'd just been blindsided by Brendan, and that was why those boos were so deafening. It's the hope that kills you. We've said that a few times on here. And there's never been a game, I don't think, where we've played at Ibrox in quite some time where Rangers went into it fully expecting to not only win, but there was talk of it being a thrashing, and it just never really materialised. And that was because Brendan Rodgers found out a way to get the best from the players that he had available, found out the tactics that were going to get the job done. I think most people going into this game were expecting it to be in a much more of an open game. It wasn't a spectacle by any stretch of the imagination. I wouldn't turn around and say it's one that many people are going to go want to rewatch the full 90 minutes of. But at the same time, Brendan found a way to get a win, and he found a way to just neutralise the threats that Rangers offered. And it was by playing those intricate passes, keeping the ball, forcing them to try and chase the game, which they didn't really look like they wanted to do after, about 20 minutes or so. They were kind of retreating almost and giving us that space. It was almost as if Rangers had looked at it and seen, working for, Kilmarnock and St Johnstone the last couple of weeks, that if we stand off them and just keep our shape, we'll get a chance and they won't be able to score. And that's a dangerous, dangerous game to play against Celtic because there is plenty of ability in that front line as well that can pose a problem. And just because we weren't firing on all cylinders, when it comes to a game like Ibrox, there is always going to be levels raised and performances raised in games like that. And I think the most interesting thing, Russell, and I think it was only about a minute or 2 minutes into the game, it was just even Brendan's body language on the touchline. You could tell. I was at the St Johnstone game the week before, and to me, didn't look as interested. He didn't quite look himself quite yet in the St Johnstone game. He still kind of looked quite passive to me. But you could tell.
I highlighted that as well. Yeah, I highlight that.
Aye, yeah, I think it was pretty noticeable in the ground. Certainly from where I was seated, I was almost across from him, and it maybe did convey on the TV images too. But I felt, the first time you got a glimpse of him, it's actually Mickey Beale that's sitting in the dugout, and Rodgers is already getting the finger movement and doing all these sort of mad gestures with his hands that nobody seems to have a clue what he's doing. This sort of Brendan Rodgers sorcery, if you will, is already beginning to come back. And I think it's maybe taken him going to Ibrox to then just remind himself just who the fuck he is, because, at the end of the day, Brendan Rodgers is an elite manager, and he's not going to stand for somebody like Mickey Beale trying to damage his reputation. And he knows what was at stake, and he decided it was time to raise the stakes at Ibrox. And if he's able to win there with that team, then God only knows what could happen in one of these future derbies when he's at full strength. And as I say, I think even, looking at that, Russell, that's a game nobody really probably expected us to win, I would say, going into it. I think there might have been hope, of course, but I don't think many, when they've seen that lineup, were very confident we would win that game. Won't be too dissimilar, I would imagine, to how a lot of people will view the European campaign as well. Well, what Brendan has proven, and I get, obviously, the jumping quality is naturally going to be there when we go to the European stage, no doubt about it. But the point still remains that where people were perhaps not feeling confident going into a game like Ibrox, where it felt as if, Celtic were on a hiding to nothing, they got a result. And that perhaps is an indication that Brendan Rodgers has a few more tricks up his sleeve when it comes to Europe this time around to pull a few surprises out of the bag. And I'm optimistic now to see how it all plays out.
Well, I think optimism is one thing. I think, Jonathan, we're getting closer and closer to the movie that we thought Brendan should be in. And I think the transfer window aside, I think we could talk about that later on in the show, in fact, what we thought at the end of the transfer window, because you had your thoughts on that. But right now, I just felt, Brendan, you're absolutely right. His body language, the reaction after it, the way he spoke, even right before the game. Remember, I think Frank Brennan brought it up earlier, that I know how to win. I'm going to teach these guys, the new players, how to win. Some of them know how to win, but we'll know how to win. I think there's a bit of arrogance in that statement as well. And I think that's me. That's the Brendan I'm after. And then in terms of what he does tactically, none of us understand it. You call it sorcery and stuff, what he's doing with his hands, but I think he's getting a message across. It just takes a wee bit of time for the players to grasp it. Ange Postecoglou got beat in this reverse fixture 2 seasons ago. He won 3 out of his first 7 league games. Such was the difficulty in getting a message across when it's a change in setup, a change in tactics. There's nothing wrong with that either. That's just part and parcel of it. Brendan's held to a different standard. But what I didn't want to see was Rodgers light. And I feel like he's probably played too safe, in my opinion, publicly up to now. And I think once you start seeing results like yesterday come in, then we'll get that bit closer to the guy that we all were pining for not to leave the club in the first place. This is what we need to get back to. Obviously, there's a bit of revisionism and a bit of accuracy in the fact that from midway through season 2, the football got a bit poor. Not one person wanted him to leave, though, Jonathan. Get that right. Otherwise, you do not get the reaction that we got when he did. Simple. Simple as that. The reaction when he left is because deep down we did not want him to leave. I just think that right now, this is the guy finding his feet again in the job. He's probably tried to be too kind. He's probably tried to be a wee bit diluted. Not quite Rodgers light, but he's probably tried to be, like me again sort of thing. And then once it came to results, once they start coming in, once I know you've got no choice but to back this, this new regime, then we start seeing, a guy fully with his swagger back. I think he'll be also, when I talk about results, I think when the League Cup exit will be one he'll use the other way around. I think that'll be one that really stimulates him for the rest of the season. He'll be fucked off at that cup record being gone at the first hurdle. That is going to annoy him this season. If anything were to motivate a Brendan Rodgers to go through an invincible season, it's a bit early for that. But to at least do to at least win the league and the cup double, and make these inroads or impacts in Europe that he promised, I think sometimes you need to have a wee bit of adversity. Sometimes you need to see the fans aren't always going to be like fucking all on side you for the get-goes. You might not be the Messiah. Sometimes you have to earn it back. He came in as a Messiah. Let's be honest. He came in with 11,000, 13,000 fans there. That'll never, maybe we'll be seen again if we get someone crazy in the future. It's unlikely to see that sort of scene again. So he came in with that sort of, godlike sort of persona the first time around. He's having to earn it this time. I think once he does, he'll start getting right into his groove again. Just before I get your thoughts on that, Johnston, we'll say a big shout out to our resident viewer, Pam. 11 months a member. Bring on more of the banter years. Nice one, Pam. On you go, Jonathan.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at Brendan, I think he likes a challenge, and I think he'll have known that one of the biggest challenges he was going to face, particularly in the early stages, was winning back around the fan base, because he knew and he accepted it even in his early, pressers, that there were going to be Celtic fans that were unhappy with how he'd left and were probably going to be unhappy that he'd ended up coming back in. So I think, he would have looked at that, and he knew that the biggest fixture that he was going to have the opportunity to change those minds wasn't necessarily going to be a home game against St Johnstone, but it was always going to end up becoming these fixtures and these games when there's so much at stake. And I think Brendan Rodgers knew if he was able to produce his magic and produce his best tactical abilities in a match like this, the Celtic fans would end up buying back in, particularly if the result follows, because it's a results business, and it won't take long for Brendan Rodgers to win over any dissenting voices, provided he's getting the results. And he knew how big this fixture was, particularly when there was a lot of grumblings of discontent, both around the playing squad, whether he's still going to be able to manage. There was question marks over his ability, after the past couple of weeks by some Celtic fans. Transfer window backdrop as well wasn't looking particularly great. So there was all the ingredients there for that to have been a disaster on Sunday. And Brendan Rodgers flipped it and turned it into one of the most memorable victories we've had, against Rangers in a while. Because they're the ones you always tend to remember. It's the ones you end up going into and thinking, we're going to lose this, or this is going to be a really tough game, or we've been written off here, and then you come away with the win. They always end up standing out to you more than the ones you end up expecting to win, and you do the job. So I think Brendan knew all of this going in. I think he needed something like this to try and drive him forward. I think that the derby actually came probably at the perfect time for him. A lot of people wouldn't have relished that after the backdrop of losing to Kilmarnock and drawing with St Johnstone. I actually think that's something Brendan Rodgers would have enjoyed, because he likes being under pressure. I think he quite enjoys having those expectations put on him. I think he was always going to be looking at this game as one that he could get a result in. And I think, he got the players playing extremely well. And as I say, I go back to it. I think most people would have been really worried when Liam Scales came in, but he kept it simple, Scales, and he did a very good job. And that's just one example that Brendan's been able to get that sort of performance out of a player that most wouldn't deem anywhere near good enough to be playing, and probably won't play in another derby this season unless we've got serious problems at the back again. But that just goes to show that the quality of the manager, because, as I say, we're missing a good 4 or 5 players there from the first team that you would normally expect to be playing in these types of matches, and he still managed to find a way to win. So, yes, if you're looking at Brendan Rodgers, he is going to be looking at this now and thinking, okay, I've probably got most of the fans back on side after this. What else can I do to make sure I get them fully on side? Well, he won't have long to wait, because Rotterdam isn't far off on Champions League match day 1. And that, I think, is where he is really going to be judged, whether fairly or unfairly. And I think that's where he wants to be judged in any event. Brendan Rodgers is at Europe's top table. And that's why he's came back, is to actually try and make a dent in European competitions with Celtic. And, following on from a win at Ibrox, he might just get that confidence boost now in the team, that the players have now bought into his style because they've seen it work at the hardest venue we go to domestically, that they might just buy into it even more now for the European games. And as I say, it might just make them a bit more interesting than perhaps some of us first feared, that this could end up being, massacres.
Well, I think it's interesting that he described it as half a first team. Half a first team available. I think that's just a wee quick reminder he's giving you. Do you know what I mean? That, maybe this isn't as easy as it looks. And I know he's adapting. And I know the players he signed were never as good as they were made out. However, I've went in there with half a first team missing. End of. And that should build your confidence where you go, you're against the odds for one reason against Rangers if you're half the team. Even with a full 11 available, which won't be the best first choice first 11 won't be available for Rotterdam, right? We know the reasons why, but it gives you that faith that when he's not got all his options there, he can still get results out the bag. If he has all his options there, then raise the level of the opposition, he might still be able to get a result out the bag. There's a renewed faith, Jonathan, in what he's doing after yesterday. That is my belief. He needed that result. It's a jolt that I think the fan base, the many doubters that were required of him. And I think now we're in a space where we can go, right, okay, the window happened. We went all that enamoured by it, let's be fair. But with the Champions League ahead and the disadvantages that brings in terms of finance and stuff like that, we didn't get the biggest disparity level Champions League group that we could have either. So whilst we might not be favourites going into all 6 fixtures, we're in with a puncher's chance in pretty much all of them, I would say, at the very least, let alone the home games, where there's probably more than a puncher's chance, to be fair. I wonder if you're right, that the timing of this fixture actually came at the perfect storm, if you like. And when you talk about the perfect storm, it'd be remiss of us, before we move on to talking about Kyogo, who I want to talk about next, and then we can look at the window, because I do want your thoughts on that. But before we go to that, we need to obviously flip it and look at the opposite dugout. What does yesterday mean for our rivals? Where did they go from here? I can't believe how sharp the knives are for Beale, in terms of, I always had a hunch that he was going to talk himself out his own fucking job, and he's just too arrogant, too ignorant to see it. These words will get used against him, not just by Celtic fans, but by his own fans. As like eventually, they're all just, all right, they're not quite the same as us, but you know what I mean? Like, anyone who listens to rhetoric like that he comes away with, he was taking credit for stopping the 10. He then started making comments like, when he wasn't quite the manager yet, he was going to games watching, overlooking Gio, when Gio was still in situ, clearly in talks of that club at the time, and he was in a different job at the time. And then he said something like in an interview, as QPR manager, whilst visiting Ibrox, watching over an under pressure Gio, had we stayed, we'd have won that league last season, no problem. These things come back and bite you on the arse. We then know about the excuses calling Ange lucky and all this stuff last season. Then he turns it into, I've been back more than I could ever believe. We've got our jobs, our job done early. The board have backed me so much. Yada, yada. I'm God's gift. And now he starts telling everyone that his planet cuckoo land they're on, when basically, essentially that's what he's saying when it comes to the level of transfer spend Rangers have actually conducted this summer. He's now dropped it down to 13 million on 9 players. Wow, Michael. That's not quite something we were aware of till you lost yet again in a big game. I think the knives are sharpening over there. Here's my bet. Brendan Rodgers faced up to Michael Beale in the first Glasgow derby of the season. He will not face Michael Beale in the last Glasgow derby this season. No two ways about that, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I can't imagine Beale will be around. He might not even make it to the second one. Such as the momentum shift when these games kind of go against you. He is now walking a very, very tight rope, if you like. I don't think there's much scope there for error, because, if they were to drop points in any of their fixtures coming up and Celtic have the chance to potentially increase their lead to, say, 7 points or anything like that, it's already beginning to get to a point where it might look like it's an insurmountable lead even at a very early stage, because Rangers fans and Celtic fans have seen this story and this movie play out countless times, over the past 10, 15 years, particularly with Celtic's dominance in the league over this period, where if Celtic can get their noses in front and get themselves a bit of a cushion, Celtic end up running away with league titles. That's just what happens. Rangers don't have the stomach to come back. They don't have the players, the mentality. They don't have the manager there, and he's been running around making up excuses. Pretty much got a free pass last season because he was already behind in the league, even though he had over half a season to try and correct that. He still had a chance at winning both of the cups. He failed against us twice in them, but again, that's all been conveniently forgotten about. And you were almost starting this season, and if you didn't know any better and had just been dropped in to Ibrox and were watching that on the telly, at the weekend there, you would be looking at that and thinking, oh, Mickey Beale and Brendan Rodgers must have both just started their jobs in the summer. Such was the narrative going in. They were trying to almost put it as if he hadn't been in situ for the last, almost 12 months now. And I just found that whole thing remarkable. But the penny's beginning to drop. He's running out of excuses after that. He was expected to win. He thought he was going to win. They've ended up with an absolutely disastrous week, getting scudded off PSV, and then this was something they never thought was going to happen. They thought worst case scenario would be a draw at Ibrox yesterday, and even then they'd have been disappointed with that. They lost.
Where does that come from, that arrogance? You are playing a team that the majority of them are involved at the very least in a treble winning squad last year. Celtic weren't playing any new signings or anything like that were arrived at the end of the window. We thought Palmer might feature. He didn't even come off the bench. It was Holm who came off the bench, but he's been there for a couple of months. He should have been doing his homework properly. And shown the levels of respect that a half-decent manager worth his salt does. And he obviously doesn't lick his wounds either. Certainly not with those bottom teeth that he's got. I don't know what the fuck he does, man. You can fit your tongue through every single one of those. It's disgusting. He talks like that, and I'm like, I don't know what those gaps are. It's just horrible. The guy looks to me like he's someone who believes his own hype more than he believes in what his players can do. Rodgers yesterday put all his faith in players, even as the Celtic fans, was looked at and said, do you know what? I didn't like that team. I don't have confidence in that team. Rodgers puts his faith and invests it in the players in front of him and makes them then believe in that. I think what Beale does is have ultimate faith in himself, and I think it's misplaced, without actually doing fuck all to convince the players of this. And I don't think he done his homework. I don't think he treated the likes of Callum McGregor. I always go back to that example because of the space he had first half was just so stark. It's like that's incredible that you could ever think that was going to work. I just think there's an aloof arrogance about him that will end up being his neck on the chopping block, not by Celtic fans. We want him to stay, but by his own.
Yeah, as I say, I think he comes across as somebody who really bought into that hype as being the inside sort of man when Gerrard was there the first time, as if he was the brains behind the operation. And he's kind of lived off that reputation since he's came back in. However, he's going to be struggling to live off that reputation now, because they would have thought, if this narrative was true, that he was the brains behind the operation, you've got to remember he was in the dugout when Brendan was here last time, albeit as, one of Gerrard's coaches. And, part of the narrative was that, Gerrard was going to end up getting the better of Brendan. That's what the Rangers fans would have had you believe anyway at the time. And it was something they were working towards. And also Beale would have played a big part in that. So if all of that was true, then that would all have been leaning towards Beale knowing already how to beat Brendan, because he was already working it out when Brendan was in situ the first time around. But it's become readily clear to me that, Mickey Beale's just one of these guys who's just all talk and very little actual action when it comes to him. I don't think there's anything that was really tactically brilliant from him in this particular fixture. Again, I would go back to last season. I don't think they played particularly well tactically against us in many of those games either. The only time he's actually beaten Celtic was in a dead rubber that nobody cared about at the end of last season. And he's just running out of excuses now. I think he's been very good at talking a good game and avoiding much scrutiny. I think he's done a very good job of avoiding scrutiny up until now. However, the Rangers fans aren't going to accept Celtic, an understrength Celtic coming to Ibrox and winning in the manner that they did yesterday. And as I say, his neck's now on the block, because if they have 2 more slip-ups in the league before we play them next, I would imagine they'll be baying for blood. He'll do very well to even see out the next derby. And if he does make it to the next derby and we've still got that 4-point lead, he could be on for an absolute scalping at Celtic Park, because by then Celtic will be a far stronger place than they are now. Brendan will have had more time to have implemented his ideas. We might still be in Europe by that point, as well, hopefully, if everything goes well, and that's going to only breed confidence if that were to be the case. And I just can't see anything other than Celtic, totally wiping the floor with them at this moment in time when it actually comes to the game at Celtic Park. So for me, you're talking about him not being in situ by the end of the season. I would go one further and think Mickey Beale will probably be gone from Rangers, I think, by the end of the year. And that's just how quickly it's all going to start turning on him now. Because unless something happens, the only way he's going to really get more of a reprieve, Russell, is if Celtic do something wrong. If Celtic keep winning their games to maintain their 4-point lead.
I think you're being ambitious, mate, thinking it'll only be 4 points come the next derby.
Well, I'm pretty much saying if it was 4, I think 4 is the best case scenario for Rangers. I really do. I think
by a long shot. By a long shot.
Yeah, I mean, I think so as well. But I think if it goes to more than 4 and it starts being 7, 8, 9, whatever you want to call it, then I think he's out of a job before the next one even rolls round. Such will be the nature and unpleasantness at Ibrox, and that's just what they end up doing. They end up going after the manager. But they'll probably actually need to look at some of those players as well, because some of them are just needed replaced in that Rangers team. They've proven time and time again that they are not able to compete with us. Long may they stay from our point of view, absolutely. But I would say, from a Rangers standpoint, they might want to stop thinking about the manager and start thinking about the players, because quite frankly, Celtic have had the number pretty much every time we've played them. And even when we've changed managers, changed systems, changed half our team, we're still getting the same result that we always do. So it's kind of, same but different, as David Logue likes to put it. It's different players. It's the same result. We've all seen this movie before, and Mickey Beale won't be the answer for him. Long may he stay, as far as I'm concerned, because he doesn't have the answers to beat Celtic. Didn't have the answers when we were at Dan's Postecoglou. Certainly won't have the answers now Brendan Rodgers is at the helm.
So it's not just that, though, Jonathan. Let's be honest. I mean, when it comes to not having answers, what manager could Rangers possibly get that would have the answers for a guy like Kyogo Furuhashi? Now, this is a player who makes sometimes, not at Maeda levels, may I add, but sometimes makes simple things look difficult in terms of what a striker you would think would do. Probably because we hold them at a higher standard now. You get 14 million replays and you see them all on social media a million times. But he makes sometimes the one-on-ones where he has to think a wee bit more difficult. And then other times you just go, that's a killer. That's a killer. That is a cold, calculated killer of a striker. And Kyogo, he tries to flick. Do you know what flick he was trying? He was trying the Henrik Larsson one to John Hartson at Ibrox. He was trying to replicate that. That is what he was trying to do with the flick. He wasn't trying to score the flick, as insinuated in commentary, which was bizarre. By Kenny Miller, he was trying to actually lay it perfectly square across the 6-yard line. That is what he's trying to do. Remember, Larsson did a beautiful little flick. I think it was within 60. Was it within 60 seconds? That goal was it that goal?
No, I don't think it was.
No, that was Sutton.
That was Sutton.
Sorry. I'm getting confused. Same end. But yeah, I always remember Larsson did the wee flick and Hartson just passed it into the bottom corner. That is what he was trying to do there. He was trying to square it off with the wee flick. He's trying to finish it like that. Then, though, he has the running one-on-one. Too many wee small touches. Didn't get it quite just positioned right from under his feet. It just seemed, I don't know, he was a bit tentative and then he didn't quite know what to do. If you actually watch the replay, Connor Goldson slides in. Is that his hand that stops that ball? Up for debate. Jack Butland, by the way, in the midst of that, just pushes him over. 2 hands in his back, just launches him. Don't know if you've seen that replay. I noticed it live at the time. I noticed it live at the time and went, they'll never talk about that. But it takes folk on Twitter and stuff to notice it. Then he gets his next chance. He goes, see, rather than thinking, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to blitter it with the outside of my boot. And I just trust my instincts that my accuracy will be there. Jonathan, he's hit that so early. No goalkeeper can be positioned right for that. But it's the occasions he's doing it on. This is like he's decided, I dictate outcomes in this fixture. This fixture is where I belong. I want to become a scalper. You are now a scalper, Kyogo. This is what you do, mate. You are now part of the scalping club. End of story. It's done. Since the turn of the year, 2023, that's his sixth goal against them, mate. He's only ever scored 6 goals against them. He joined us in 2021. All 6 in 2023. I'm right in that. I am right.
Yeah. New Year's Derby was the first one.
And I just thought that finish is just someone that's a ruthless streak. We have to accept, particularly myself, probably slightly more than you, but Henrik was so iconic when you grew up. But he was so iconic because that was the guy. That doesn't mean because someone's not of Henrik's level, then future generations don't still get to have heroes. Oh, well, it's not as good as Billy McNeil, so you kind of like a centre-back, Virgil van Dijk, you know. You never lifted a European Cup, so fuck it. Do you know, it doesn't work like that. The younger generations have to have heroes. This guy, I think, has all the talismanic qualities of Henrik Larsson. It's a comparison I'm going to keep going to this season. I spoke about age before. The times, the arrival at Celtic in their careers, literally 6 months apart, something like that in terms of age. 6 months apart. You can see it. Kyogo's maturing, mate. He is maturing. And if he makes a mistake, he gets annoyed now. And he makes up for it in a ruthless fashion. Only the King of Kings I've ever seen done before. That is what separated Henrik. Henrik's biggest strength was, if he missed one, he'd always do this. He'd always do that with his hands. And you'd be like, oh, he's annoyed. Next one, it would be an outrageous finish. Remember, I'll give you a great example of it. A penalty against Valencia he misses. He then takes a curler from the very corner of the box, and he curls it into the far corner. Absolutely perfect. And you went, that's a million times harder than the penalty. You're fucked off about the penalty, aren't you, Henrik? It's just how these operators, these guys that end up with that ruthless streak, that's how they end up. They get annoyed by their own mistakes. Kyogo decided, do you know what? No more thinking. Boof. Have a bit of that. There's a fantastic angle of it where you see it coming right off the outside of the boot. There's a beautiful swerve in the ball. No keeper saving it. They're not even set to save it. I think in the big moments where you can do that, sensational.
Yeah, I think Kyogo, he was always going to end up becoming one of these guys. For me, it was just going to be a case of getting the monkey off the back, which he managed to do earlier in the year. But once he got one against them, you could tell he's just too good a player not to end up scoring more and more into them. And he enjoys this fixture now. I'm not sure at first he was quite ready for what this fixture necessarily entailed. He did get a lot of rough and tumble treatment, a lot in the earlier fixtures between the two when he first came in. But I think he's now adapted. He's now used to what to expect on these games. He had a wee bit of time to think. He's probably a bit annoyed with some of the ones that he missed prior to the volley, especially when he's going in on goal and he does seem to get the ball stuck under his feet. But, that's one he would have been really annoyed with because, usually Kyogo takes those sort of chances and puts them away without even having to think too much about it. The goal itself actually does remind me of a goal. It's interesting you're bringing up John Hartson. It actually reminds me of Hartson's goal in 2003 at Celtic Park against the knockdown, and then he absolutely leathers one from the edge of the box and into the top corner as well from memory. And I think Kyogo has all those sorts of traits about him, but he is going to be somebody that, and he's just not given too much time to think about it, and he's allowed to be instinctive. Is when he actually operates at his best. I think that runs true for a lot of our attacking players. To be perfectly honest, I think there's a few of them that fit that sort of mould. I think Maida is probably better when he doesn't have much time to think about it. He's shown that a few times this season. I think Abada is another one that is like that. He prefers more instinctive finishes than having too much time to think about it. And in those moments, I remember when the ball was coming through to him, I'm thinking, you're going to take this down and it's going to be a cakewalk. I was thinking, when he's volleyed it straight away, I'm thinking, he must think he's offside or something. He's just leathered that in frustration. But no, it wasn't
frustration
even close.
Frustration is right. Frustration is right. The frustration at his own earlier I think in his mind misdemeanors.
Yeah, I think certainly with the one that he's clean through and goal, that would have really irked him because that's one that he scores 9 times out of 10, and he didn't make a particularly good job of it. And perhaps Butland giving him a wee shove and everything else reminded him of how annoying these guys can be to play against. And he was like, "Well, the next time I'm going to get a chance, you better believe I'm going to be taking it." And he's proven to be worth his weight in gold, and he'll only get better as well under Brendan Rodgers. He's going to be another one that'll enjoy playing under him. And for Kyogo, it's really the next step is, if you're looking at somebody like Larson, and of course, it's very difficult for any player to be as good as Henrik was, but certainly if he's looking at his own career trajectory right now, the next stage for him is to really start now doing it on the European stage and improving it, because that was something that I think he would have been annoyed with last year in the
Well,
Champions League. I think
exactly. I just there's a good live chat going on. Obviously, everything's all fair and love on the Boise bus in terms of the debate. I'm very much to the camp that I don't think Kyogo's of the level of a Henrik. But you know what? Fans deserve to have someone to worship. And I think in the current state of affairs, and this leads me on to our final talking point because we've not had your thoughts on the window. I think in the current state of affairs, what Celtic are willing to invest in the playing staff, whether right, wrong, whatever, I think this guy is alive on Kyogo and he's one to be post and deservedly so of as many posters on the wall as before. Mikey Moniz there at 28. It's hard to say if BR can improve Kyogo. Kyogo, if he is what I think he is, I think he'll get better with age. I think he'll time his runs better. I think Kyogo's playing at almost a different sport for the team. I think his runs are intelligent as fuck. I think what I mean in timing them better is getting to the level where he'll not see that one. So why do it? I think his finishing will get more ruthless. I'm convinced of that as well. As he enters his peak years, this guy committing to us, unbelievable for us, Jonathan. He's committed his peak years to Celtic, only just this summer been. And I also fancy Brendan to get one hell of a tune out of him. Let's talk about the transfer window, though, before we go to Sutton Death. Obviously, me and you, we've got egg in the face in terms of we thought we'd break the transfer record at least once, if not twice. Never happened. Absolutely never happened. Never got close. 4.3 million was the highest pay. That was for Rocky, who I very much like the look of. Don't want to deny that. I think the next level, who was that? Would that have been Home? 3 million, like a Bielka, 3 million as well?
Palma, was he 3.5? Palma?
3.5 for Palma, yeah. He didn't feature at the weekend, but we're looking forward to seeing him. That's one of the frustrations for me. Palma could have been brought in earlier, couldn't he?
Yeah.
That's not one of the ones. That's not one of the ones me and you were talking about when we were waiting to the end of the window for the box office. He's a fall into that category. Palma's the one. Go out and get him. Go out and get that guy and make sure he's now of Brendan Rodgers philosophy way before the season begins. There was no excuse for that. So it tells me he was a wee bit further down the list. And maybe Brendan had a similar list to what me and you hoped he did. He's just not got any of them in. Brendan, it wouldn't surprise me though. I'm still all in on the manager. I'm all in on the manager more than people were with Ange. Let me get that categorically across. I am more than all in on Brendan. But what I want to also say is, when it comes to whatever happens this season, whatever success we have, and it will be inevitable success, I'll be quite bold to say that. Let me just say this. He'll do a lot of that in spite of this board, in my opinion, Jonathan, not through full-blown, proper support.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at it, for all the credit Brendan gets for the result, and rightfully so, he went into that game with perhaps one hand almost tied behind his back because we just dilly-dallied so much in the window. And even, when it's coming towards an end, I was expecting something to be getting linked in the last couple of days that was going to be a bigger name. And even if it hadn't happened, and, Celtic had at least attempted something, you might have not felt as bad because you would have felt there was something going on there. But it just seemed to fizzle out, really, with no intention of bringing in, a big name or getting somebody of the sort of quality that Brendan Rodgers brings to the table as a manager. And I think the Celtic board have badly let him down on that front. I think Brendan perhaps could have been a bit more forceful, but he's maybe just thinking this is his first window. He's just getting his feet back in under the table. And this time around, he doesn't want to push things too much. So I don't know how much of the blame really lies with him this time round. But I think certainly when it comes to the board, they should have been, much more proactive. It's records amounts of money going in. And I'll tell you one thing I really didn't like, Russell, about this was on deadline day, they go and announce the fourth kit, the anniversary hoop stock, which are now £75 a pop if you want to buy that top. But yet they are unwilling to put the money into their own back pockets to actually fund the manager correctly.
It's not their own back pockets. It's using the money from the strips for the year before.
Well, that's it. I mean,
the year before.
The money's there. It's been sitting in the bank account, and it's just not doing anything other than giving them all a lovely bonus when it comes to the end of year salaries. But for me, I thought that was a bit ridiculous that Celtic were then promoting a fourth top on deadline day with nothing to show for it in terms of players, and I think they were taking the fans a little bit for mugs with stuff like that. And I just think the board need to kind of reassess where we should be as a club. If they're wanting Brendan Rodgers to be fully committed to this club for the next 3 years, I'm fairly confident he wouldn't walk on us this time around after what happened last time. But you don't want to test him too much either, because he has proven, if he doesn't get the backings he feels he deserves, and the club needs to progress as a team in Europe, then he has already shown that he's not shy on walking away. If he feels like he's compelled to do so. But it's not even just about that. It's about wanting the best for the club, and wanting what's best for the club isn't keeping tens of millions of pounds in the bank account, and just in case the off chance there's a rainy day somewhere and we need some of that money to kind of keep us going through like another pandemic or something along those lines. But it needs to be spent on the team, and it's for me not being spent wisely on the team whatsoever. And I don't know what was going on behind the scenes there, but something just seemed off to me with this window. It goes back to that word we were using last summer, unfortunately. Underwhelming was, again, how I would have summed this up. I mean, if I was giving it a score out of 10, I'd probably say that it was like a 4 or a 5. Personally, I just felt there was going to be a little bit more star power added in when there was so much money in the bank. And I would have at the very least expected Celtic to have been, making inquiries and making bids and hearing things towards the end of the window for players that were of a higher quality. But none of that really seemed to happen either, which is a bit concerning for me.
Jonathan, TV money from the season, let's say Martin's first year. That was the biggest spend we've ever seen, right? In terms of relative, to the financial landscape at the time, right? TV money then is dwarfed by what we make now. I think they were around about £1.5 million, 2 million a year then. We're about 2.5, 3 million a year domestic. Champions League money then is about quadruple, right? About quadruple what we're making then. Umbro made the kits then. Adidas now do. Do the math. I don't even want to speculate. No, we can't speculate. Who cares? Let's say the Umbro kits at that point were, I don't know, a package deal for 3 years was about £5-6 million. It's now 30, right? 30 million. Season tickets, Jonathan, are up about 35-40% since then. Right? Yes, the club made a loss then at that point, but they wouldn't make a loss now. They wouldn't. They genuinely wouldn't. All the commercial revenue, all the other revenues that come in, particularly when you're selling players for 25 million. We made a transfer net profit this summer again. A transfer net profit. Forget the Champions League money. Forget the sponsorship money. Forget season ticket money. We made a transfer window net profit yet again. That is not a board going for it. That is not we're all in. When you use a slogan like that, and you wait till the end of the window, the final day, deadline day, to release a fourth kit, I think you are fleecing the supporters. I think it's wrong. I think it's absolutely shocking. I think they are doing with Brendan what they did with Ange. Inadvertently, they got away with this with Ange. Everyone bought in to the manager. They know eventually, as we spoke about at the top of the show, for balance, everyone will buy into Rodgers eventually because he will win things. This is what he does. And they will buy in again. And he's got the charisma once he starts getting into his groove. That we will all buy in again. But it's like they've done it for that. Once the manager deflects off everything off us. Hey! Yeah. Charlatans, mate. Nonsense. Dinosauric prehistoric dinosaur behaviour. That's what they do. They don't give a monkeys about moving with the times. They do not care about how we achieve in Europe. Just make Europe. That's all they want. And they want to slap Rangers silly in the league or finish a point above them and get into Europe again. Now, I'm of the opinion, when Rodgers came in, I can't deny it was a blind faith in Brendan. I hold Brendan a wee bit responsible as well, Jonathan. I've got to be honest, for what's happened in the transfer window too. You can't have your cake and eat it. You can't be, just completely it's not your fault, Brendan. You're not getting your message across strongly enough either, pal. All right? Simple as that. You're not getting what you want. Therefore, that onus was on you as the manager in situ at Glasgow Celtic to make sure you get players that you demand. And you don't just ask, you start demanding, especially someone who's seen the movie before. So It was a shit window, in my opinion. He'll win the league in spite of it all. I've no doubts about that. But when it comes to being a European force, don't keep your eyes off that board. Anyway, we'll go to funny things in life and all that. Jonathan, your favourite time of the show. Here he comes, Phil McGinley.
All right,
Phil
McGinley.
This is like Russell going into Europe. This is like Russell going into the Champions League, really, at the minute.
I'm chilling myself up with a pen running out of ink.
That the Celtic board provided him with.
Yeah, that sounds straight out of the Celtic board. Aye, it does indeed. Cheaping out on that as well. But yeah, it's that time, guys. Sutton Deaf is here again. Everyone's favourite quiz on a Monday night, the place to be. We fit fun to end the show. So last week, in spite of Russell not being available, we still had a wee exhibition of Sutton Deaf, and incredibly, Jonathan got beat. Mark Kearney beat him. So he can be toppled. He can. And is tonight, Russell, the night you're going to get yourself back in this competition? Because it's currently 4-1 at the moment.
I doubt it.
To Jonathan. Oh, okay, fair enough. No confidence now.
I've accepted it.
It's 9 games now, Phil. He's pretending.
Once the judge came on and just Jonathan decided to let it go to a tie break, etc., I've realised that for whatever reason, Jonathan knows what the question is in advance and used to the cahoots, and I get that. So there's no point because Jonathan, so the one time there's a tie break, we've done how many Sutton deaths? 50? And then it's like, we'll take it to a tie break because Mark's in the guest one. And yeah, Jonathan lets him win on a tie. It's just like, fuck off. Do you know what I mean? I know I'm getting played, so I'll just sit back and accept it. And hopefully I can put one out the bag every now and then, but that'll be it.
Are you going to be writing a statement to Phil like the Rangers board after that? Because that's kind of where it feels like it's going.
I'm like
Conspiracy
Mourinho
Club tonight. Wow.
I'm like Mourinho at Inter Milan and you're top, Phil.
It's Conspiracy Club tonight. Wow. Coming out with all of that stuff. No, he definitely doesn't know the question. And yeah, tonight
I just tell the truth. I tell the truth for the fans because I think the fans deserve to know.
Honestly, sounding more and more like Mickey Beale every week with this.
No.
It's not a good look.
I just think the fans deserve to know. You're out to get me, and I need a siege mentality from the support to leave any chance against us. But he's improving at your in cahoots. You proved it last week.
Well, with all that said, I guess we'll crack on then with tonight's Sutton Deaf. As I said a moment ago, it's currently 4-1 to Jonathan in this season of Sutton Deaf. But last season we saw that these deficits can be overcome, so it's definitely not over yet. So, in case you don't know, if you're just tuning in for the first time and seeing this, it's a wee penalty shootout style competition between the brothers Boyce here. 5 shots each. I've got a question, multiple answers. Give me a right answer and score a goal. Of course, whoever scores the most gets the point. So, Jonathan, you won last week, or 2 weeks ago, the last game that you played against each other. So, do you wish to go first, or do you wish to go second?
I'll go first, Phil. I'll let him keep his clue. He likes his clue.
Yeah, that's right, of course. Second player, or the person in second is allowed a clue,
Said
a
like
hint,
a man
a
who
riddle.
already knows what the clue is.
Oh, no, you do not.
Yeah,
okay, there's good news.
Know
There's good news and there's bad news. This one, the good news to this question is there are 31 answers. There's lots. The bad news is it's something that you used to hate. It's a very modern question. It's very much very recent because you kind of struggle with recent stuff. So I hope you've been paying attention. Because lads, the UEFA Champions League draw happened last week and Celtic were included in this. Can you name the 31 other teams who were in the draw with Celtic?
Oh, okay.
There you go.
I'll kick us off with Arsenal.
Arsenal indeed, we're in it. Yep.
Champions Manchester City.
Yeah, Man City. Yep.
Very good. Go for a Real Madrid.
Real Madrid. Yep.
Barcelona.
And Barcelona. Mm-hmm.
Manchester United.
Man United were in it.
Napoli.
And Napoli were in it. Yes, indeed.
Atletico Madrid.
Yes.
Lazio.
Mm-hmm.
I shall go for Porto.
Yes, Porto were in there. Yep.
Feyenoord.
And Feyenoord, yes. So it's 5 apiece after 5. I had the feeling you would sweep up pretty quickly. So a maximum of 5 more guesses, or we will require a tiebreaker if you are still drawing after that. So he's flying at the moment, boys.
I shall go for Bayern Munich.
Yeah, Bayern. Surprise. Bayern Munich, always there.
And Dortmund.
Yeah, Dortmund, they were in.
I shall go with a team that's not been in the Champions League for a long time, Newcastle United.
Yeah, Newcastle. Yes, indeed.
Can we recap who's in? That we've got.
The recap so far: Arsenal, Real Madrid, Man United, Atletico Madrid, Porto, Bayern, Newcastle, Man City, Barcelona, Napoli, Lazio, Feyenoord, Borussia Dortmund.
Red Star Belgrade.
Yes, Red Star Belgrade. Nice one.
AC Milan.
Yeah, AC Milan were in close. Yep, doing good, boys.
Paris Saint-Germain.
Yeah, PSG.
I shall go for Copenhagen.
Yeah, FC Copenhagen. Yep.
I'm struggling.
Oh,
I'm struggling.
That's a shame.
I'll take my clue.
okay. The clue for the missing team here is Josip Juranovic has moved to Germany. Certainly paid off.
Union Berlin.
Oh, that is good.
Berlin, yes, they are indeed.
Thankfully, a clue, not a riddle. Thanks, Phil.
What is
I'll put it
I think
straight
Jonathan
back.
didn't write that one.
I'll put it straight back to you. Here was a clue. It was a nice, good clue, Russell. The team that knocked Rangers out to qualify, PSV Eindhoven.
Oh, I've got them written down.
Yes,
Yeah.
So it's 10-9 to Jono. Russell, you need this to force the tiebreaker question.
Yeah, I'm in Shakhtar Donetsk.
Yeah, Shakhtar.
Oh, it's going to tie. It's
going to tiebreaker. Yes, indeed. So 10 apiece, boys. Well done.
That was a nice, easy one.
Yeah, there you go. I thought it'd been a recent thing. I know he's kind of struggled with recent stuff, and it's like I wonder if how much. But no, the ones that he's missed were Red Bull Salzburg, Galatasaray, Inter Milan. A visual clue for you tonight.
Oh yeah.
Racing Club Lens, RB Leipzig, Real Sociedad, Royal Antwerp, SC Braga, Sevilla, SL Benfica, and Young Boys of Bern for the teams that he's missed. A tiebreaker, so as usual, I've picked a player from Celtic's yesteryear from the CelticWiki.com, and I'm going to be looking for how many goals they scored. Tonight's player in question is Roy Aitken. How many goals did he score in his pretty long Celtic career?
How long was he there for?
All competitions. Oh God, you're looking at
Beat the bear.
70s footy, like the late 80s, maybe very, very early 90s, like 1990 maybe. He was there for a fair long time, club captain. A defender / sometimes played in midfield, but yeah, Roy Aitken. So in all competitions, so that's League, Scottish Cup, League Cup, and European goals. How many goals do you think he scored? And whoever gets closest gets the point.
Who goes first?
Well, Jonathan, you were guessing first there.
Yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea if this guy was a goal scorer or not, to be honest with you. No idea. I'm going to say 45.
Okay. And Russell, are you going to go
53.
higher or lower? One of you is very, very, very close, by the way. You're not far out. The correct answer is 55. Russell, you have got the point. You were 2 out, mate. Just 2 out, so fair play. Well done.
So I won.
Yeah, you said...
Oh, did you? I was sorry, I said 55.
It's like...
No, you said,
I said 53.
53. You said 53, so you're 2 out.
I was
You were
2
the
goals
closest.
out.
2 goals
Jonathan
out.
celebrate like Rangers celebrate disallowed goals.
I
So,
made a VAR check on that. I think Russell said 33. I thought he said.
6 in the League Cup and 5 in Europe. So 55 goals
Jonathan
overall. So
celebrated just like all the Hawks. That's how you do it, son. Hey, disallowed goals. He celebrates disallowed goals. It's 4-2. The boss is back. Come on.
there you go.
I mean, that was definitely a question more suitable for Russell, to be fair. He would have watched a bit of Roy Aitken. I'm not having that.
When did I watch Roy Aitken? When?
You'd have watched some old videos of him. That definitely was a ruse, that Roy Aitken.
You're a Celtic historian, Jonathan. You are
I'm not having Roy Aitken.
What do you mean you're not having Roy Aitken? We just didn't exist because you weren't born?
Yeah, pretty much. I thought that most of the questions were usually from 2000 onwards. 2000 onwards, I thought.
Well, so is it the 2000? Sorry, just to be clear, is this the 2000 onwards quiz at Sutton Death? I missed that memo.
The tiebreaker last week was Paul Lambert, and he played in the 90s.
Right.
And the
It could be anybody. It could be anybody from Celtic yesteryear.
It's a wee bit confusing. I never remember hearing it was the 2000 onwards Sutton Death. And Jonathan, just so you know, at no point did I ever watch Roy Aitken at any point in my Celtic sporting life playing for Celtic. So stop talking shite.
I think you probably did.
No, I definitely didn't.
I think you probably did.
But I didn't.
Well, the headline here is Russell point. He got the point in the end.
He celebrates disallowed goals at the Rangers fans. That's what he does. He celebrates disallowed goals just like the Rangers fans, and he looks a bit silly. So he'll start changing.
Yeah. Blah, blah. You're still miles back.
Two away. I'm back.
Miles back.
2 away.
You're rattled. It's a tie break win. It should only be like half a point for a tie break win as well. It's barely even a win.
Folks, I need to point out, much like how through the week when Russell did that show on Wednesday about the mood changing, if you rewind back about 10 minutes and look at the mood that Russell was in and how the mood has now changed just with one result, there you go. The mood has changed.
2 away as well. What a guess. This boy is back swinging, mate.
Shocking.
There you go.
Kyogo,
pin that one up on the dressing room wall, Jono. Pin this up on the dressing room wall, mate.
Shocking. Went from a conspiracy theory to now all of a sudden being all rosy in the garden. Only Russell Plus.
Yeah, that's the way it goes, mate. It's the way it goes. Just you stay calm, mate. Just you stay calm there. Mind the gap. Anyway, it's been a brilliant fun Monday Club tonight. It's always great after a win at Ibrox. Thanks to so many of you who've been watching the channel over the last few days. We've got 5,000 views for the second Sunday in a row yesterday on just a singular episode. Tonight the bus has been mobbed. Remember to give us a wee like, give us a share, slag the hair. We are out of here. Thank you, Kyogo. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Jono. We are still Jonathan.
Top of the table.